Okay, everyone. So I hope you can hear us now. We apologize for that. We had a bit of an issue, but basically, hopefully everything is in order now. So first of all, let me start by welcoming you and thanking you for joining us today in this European SDG Summit, Impactful Partnerships to Build Back Better. Big thank you as well to CSR Europe, who have hosted and organized this summit. And today's session, today's National Roundtable, is actually forming part of this SDG Summit. The main theme of it will be the SDGs within the NGOs and the voluntary sector. Now, I'll briefly go over the agenda. So the agenda is a few minutes introduction by Ms. Helga Lul, who's the president of Core Platform. This will be followed by Mr. Mauro Parascandalo, who's the CEO of the Malta Council for the Voluntary Sector, and he will be speaking a bit about the experience that the sector has in dealing with NGOs, as well as the SDGs within the NGOs and the VOs. Now, then we'll move on to Ms. Claudia Taylor-East, who's the CEO of SOS Malta, who will be presenting a case study, which is Resilient Communities, which was a project which dealt a lot with SDGs. And finally, we'll have a panel discussion, which will see Mauro as well as Claudia participating, and Mr. Glenn Bugeja, who's a manager at HSBC Bank Malta, to also give us some the business side of things as well. The theme of the panel will also be on the SDGs within the voluntary sector. Finally, we'll have a Q&A session as well as closing remarks. Now, before I pass the ball on to Helga, I just would like to remind you that all participants will be muted. However, there is a way for you to ask us questions or comment by using the chat function. The chat is on the right, so you can type in your comment there, and we will try to answer when we find the time and when we are available. Please do not close the window during the session or exit it, because it might actually give you some trouble to log back in. And finally, the session will be recorded. Here are the moderators. So it's Helga Lul, who's the president of CORE, as well as myself. I'm the executive. And these are the speakers and panelists. You have Mauro, Claudia, as well as Glenn, who will be participating in our discussion today. So with that, I pass on the mic to Helga to introduce CORE and the theme of today.
Okay, Matteo, thank you very much for the introduction, and sorry for the delay due to the technical problems. Let me just give you a very brief introduction of the Core Platform. The Core Platform was set up way back in 2015, and it's actually supported by all the business institutions in Malta and SOS as the voluntary sector. Its aim is to bring together all the stakeholders and the different sectors as an enabler. First and foremost, to try and educate businesses what about CSR and how to go about it, but also to conduct CSR together with the voluntary sector. What is most important is that CSR has to start internally. You cannot do it. It's a management principle. It's a holistic approach in all the areas of business. So you have to start first in your company yourself, with the employee engagement, with all your suppliers, with your customers, before you go then out into the local community and climate change and energy. So it is a management principle, and it has to be embraced. It's not a department, but it has to be in every part of your business. So what we did as well as CORE, part of our education thing, was to start project where we got the business community together with the NGO sector. One of them was the Resilient Communities, which was a project by CORE and SOS, and Claudia will talk more about it, about this project. We also have at the moment the National Action Plan on CSR for Malta. Malta is one of the only 2 European countries which do not have a national plan. And we are already prepared this plan from the business communities part, and are now in contact with the government to get the government side in order to create, together with the NGOs, with the voluntary sector, an overall national plan for the next years of what our priorities are in regards to CSR and SDGs. We also have a project called Astra at the moment running, which is an empowerment project for female entrepreneurs. Mainly, it entails mentoring from entrepreneurs to upcoming female and young entrepreneurs in order to try and break through the glass ceiling. In order as well to try and make businesses understand more about the SDGs, which were obviously signed on by Malta way back. We broke down the 17 SDGs into the 5 most important, which embrace all of the 17, which is people, which is the planet, partnership between all the different stakeholders in either a nation or internationally, done always peacefully, and ultimately to prosper, to be positive and prosper in all we're doing. I just would like to remark before I pass on to the next speaker that more than ever, it's now in this very difficult time that this is of utter importance. I think what we are seeing is making us realize that we need to embrace, we need to go and work on the SDGs in all aspects, all the stakeholders in a community, in a country. With that, I pass on to Mauro. Mauro, the platform is yours now.
Okay, thank you, Helga. Well, as Matteo introduced me earlier, I'm the CEO for the Malta Council for the Voluntary Sector. So the role of the voluntary sector, of the Malta Council for the Voluntary Sector, is that since we've been established since 2008, the council is the representative, local representative of the voluntary sector in general. In fact, it encompasses, even under the law, the 6 main groupings, which are the social and humanitarian, environment and animal welfare, health and disability, education, youth and sports, arts and culture, and the region of Gozo. In fact, the reason I'm mentioning these sectors is specifically because, as one may see, these actually encompass at least many of the SDGs. At least 10 or 11 of these SDGs fall in the remit of the operation of the voluntary sector. The voluntary sector, which has been up and running for many decades now, and in some areas which technically are being mentioned under one or other of the sustainable goals, the sector was, if not the instigator, at least one of the early stakeholders, which
I think we lost some feed from Mauro's side. Let's just hope he can reconnect very soon. Apologies for this. It seems we lost connection with Mauro. So as not to keep you waiting, I don't know if we should perhaps let Claudia go on with her presentation. Then perhaps Mauro can also go into more detail during the panel discussions, since he will be in it as well. Okay, so perhaps Claudia, if you can share your screen and start your presentation, it would be great. Thank you. Just in case, Claudia, you're on mute right now, if you can unmute, it would be great. Thanks.
You're still on mute, Claudia. Sorry. You need to click on the button.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll go back to sharing. Application window is not coming up now. Are you seeing the screen?
No.
So cancel again. Open screen. Okay, are we okay now?
Yes. Perfect.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you all, and a warm welcome from our tiny island in the Mediterranean. How pertinent are we with resilient communities today in the world we are living in? And I think it is so relevant and building a sustainable future together. We embarked on this project because we had one of our funding operators in Malta who actually built the fund around the SDGs, which was something quite innovative for a fund operator to base all their project proposals on the SDGs, and made sure that when the projects were evaluated, they had a results-based framework around the SDGs. And our approach, we created awareness, but we wanted to create the partnerships, and the partnerships were so important between the local government, civil society, and the business sector. And we tried localizing the SDGs. How could we translate the SDGs thematic issues, the thematic areas, the targets into the local concept? The businesses played an integral part and role in the process. So how can we bring the business sector? NGOs always feel that they are better positioned because all they do and all they implement in actual fact has something to do with the SDGs. The public and our governments have signed up to the SDGs, but has the business sector signed up to the SDGs? And this was one of the aims and objectives of resilient communities, to try and create the partnership between the three sectors, the first, the second, and the third sector. So the business sector is uniquely positioned to help establish a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable society. We also embarked and asked our local community leaders whether they had sustainable development policies within their agendas. Some of them did. However, was there any monitoring regarding their policies? How are they looking at their outputs, their indicators? How results-based are they? And this is all what resilient communities tried doing. The project wanted to create more responsible and sustainable policies and practices implemented by the business sector in partnership with civil society and local government. I don't think there was a better model for Malta other than this project, and it was a first for Malta. We probably did not make the impact we wanted to make. Why? Because of ownership of the SDGs. How are businesses, how are local governments, how are NGOs aligning their work, becoming more responsible and aligning ourselves to the SDGs? So we created a lot of awareness with all the fora, in all the forums we had, the focus groups, engagement, and tried changing behaviors with a background research, an online hub for responsible business, and an online hub where businesses could actually interact with civil society. A huge awareness raising campaign and community action plans, where our partners core were very active on the ground with 2 local councils in discussing and seeing how the communities can engage themselves more and how we can change behaviors. This was some of the results. 30.4% did not know about the SDGs. 21.5% were working in the environment. 18.4% would consider present and future, and then there were others. So the lack of understanding, and I still remember as an organization, SOS Malta had organized a parliamentary debate on the Millennium Development Goals, and it was sad that only 4% of our population actually knew what a Millennium Development Goal was and that we had signed up to the MDGs. Today, it would be interesting to see and to repeat the parliamentary debate we had organized together with the UNDP, in fact, and to see what percentage of our population actually are engaged and know about the SDGs. The background research, impactful partnerships, again, you've got all the percentages there. Creating safe and secure working environments, at least 81%, 70%. So we brought all these businesses together, communities together, to tell us a bit about how they are going to work. Are we going to manage to change behaviors? Are we going to engage and reach some target? But more often it was understanding that sustainability will give us resilient communities. So again, we promoted knowledge, and we promoted knowledge by creating a little game. We had a dice with the 5 Ps. What role do you play? Asking businesses, asking community people, and engaging in distributing this game to the communities and individuals to inspire action, to promote engagement. And we asked them to roll their dice every day and to see which P would come across, and get them to think about peace, get them to think about prosperity, get them to think about all the Ps and how they are engaging themselves with the 5 Ps. This worked. Unfortunately, because it's a project always has a start and a finish, and there's no more funding after the finish. And that again brings us to sustainability of projects and how more resilient we can be as NGOs to bring our projects not to an end, but to carry on. And how can we do this with the creativity and innovation that our roles within the communities give us, and the partnerships. Simply doing business to earn the greatest profits is no longer enough. This was our message to the business sector. Let's get together. The UN Global Compact is a must in today's world, and now even more during the pandemic. Fostering an ecosystem in which social innovation and business can work together is key to achieving the 5 Ps for the SDGs. What role do you play? And we keep asking this, what role are you playing to achieve the SDGs? Inspire action. How can we inspire action? Through sharing of good practices. And I think resilient communities was one good practice, but we need to look for more to really make impactful partnerships to build back better. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for that wonderful presentation. I just for the benefit of our viewers, I just received word from Mauro that unfortunately they had a security system that shut down their connection. Unfortunately, he will be trying to connect, but other than that, I think we can still proceed on to the panel discussion. Helga Lul, the president of CORE, will be moderating the session. We'll also have Claudia in this panel, as well as Mr. Glenn Bugeja from HSBC Bank Malta, who'll be also speaking to us about his experiences. So I think, Helga, it's up to you now to moderate the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Claudia, thank you for the very, very good presentation. And like you already explained, but maybe a bit more, how much of your daily work at SOS, for example, features SDGs? And which are the major goals you are focusing on?
I think we'll be looking, we are looking at all the goals, and we are promoting the SDGs within our work. And as I mentioned, NGOs normally are working within the framework of the 17 SDGs. How much we are realizing it and measuring it is another question. And this is why we need to work in partnership, because of becoming responsible NGOs, responsible businesses, and responsible public sector. Together we can make a difference, and the SDGs are a map, a roadmap, our roadmap, and should be everybody's roadmap, but not only institutional roadmaps, but also community, at community level. The media, for instance, I see a great lack of the SDGs in the media. How can we partner with the media to bring the SDGs more in line with everything that is happening within our communities? This is something I think which needs to be taken on board if we really want to achieve the SDGs with all the problems and challenges not only Malta's facing, but everybody's facing, as Europe, the whole global community is facing a huge amount of time.
Okay, let me now maybe ask Glenn. Glenn, because we, as Claudia says, it's the business actually, I think, which should be the driver. But we obviously know. But you as HSBC are actually on the forefront of it all, and maybe it would be good to hear a bit from you. What is your experience? Because I know that you have been trying as well within your business community to spread about the SDGs. But what are you at the moment concentrating? How are you as a HSBC doing it?
So first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this session. At HSBC, first of all, we support only NGOs or charitable institutions. And I think that is very fundamental to show the goodwill that the bank here in Malta has with regards NGOs. We don't support businesses or personal people from the HSBC Malta Foundation side. And along the years, we've been working to address many of the SDGs. For example, the last 6 years, we focused a lot on the water problem. And we had a program which was part of the global HSBC water program. And we managed to get around 1 million euros from group funding towards Malta to run 3 projects. One of them was the Catch the Drop campaign, where our staff were trained and did visit each school in Malta and addressed every student, primary and secondary in Malta, about water issues, about water conservation, water harvesting, water shortage. Then following that, we also had the Water Explorer program, where a number of schools participated and competed with a number of countries that were also participating in this international program. And lately, we developed the Malta CSR Institute, where we took the initiative to inform and educate the people in Malta and we held seminars again around the theme of sustainability. We did a number of sessions. They were named Together for Sustainability, and we had 470 participants in all. So we think that we have 470 sustainable ambassadors out there in Malta, which were trained around sustainability issues, like, for example, green buildings, eco schools, and many other subjects. This has been done over the last few years. Now, our latest initiative was also sessions around business against food waste, where we did a number of sessions addressed to the general public. These sessions, even the ones which we organized from the bank side together for sustainability, were open for the general public and for staff members from corporate companies which bank with us, but also which do not bank with us, and to NGOs. And we do them for free to educate the people out there. And as I was mentioning, the latest initiative was sessions around food waste. We plan to continue, and we have plans now to work also on climate change issues.
Thank you very much, Glenn. But obviously, we saw now, especially during the COVID period now, when it started, that businesses, without being even asked, were really coming out and forward to help, especially regard the food program, the food banks and all. So it is there. But I think what is still not understood is sort of that they have to do it first internally, and it has to be an ongoing, not just now because we are in a certain difficult times, they can show support, but it has to be far more part of their whole business philosophy. And I know that you as HSBC doing a lot, but when we did the resilient community, which was our part to see on the business side, we found out that businesses, especially in Malta, where over 90% are very small micro businesses, do not think they can do something. And the biggest problem we found as well when we did this locality was as well that there was no coordination from the local authority. In fact, there was one comment now on the site in the chat room regarding the local councils because of the political thing, because everybody works in silos. So the local council does something without telling the NGOs in this area, and the NGOs have problems to communicate with the businesses. So rather than going together and together do something, especially maybe more like Claudia mentioned as well, on the community directly and say what is the priority and what are the needs of our small community, be it a town, be it a small regional area, and help all together. It doesn't have to be always national, every small step helps. But in Malta, it's very, very difficult because there are the silos. So what is your view, Claudia, on local councils and their helps towards NGOs?
Working with local councils is a huge challenge here in Malta. How open are they in creating partnerships with the NGOs and really working together on a level of well-being for our communities? At the end of the day, the SDGs are there for each and every one of us. They're not there for sectors. They're there for the communities and for us to really build resilient communities to be able to face what we need to face in the world we are living today. And this is why I will once again stress the importance of partnership. I strongly believe that partnering with local governments, with the business sector, and with civil society is imperative for the SDGs to reach the targets that we want to reach. I know we're going to be going through difficult times post-COVID. I mean, our economies are not going to regain the potential they had before in a very quick manner. In fact, we are already seeing a downturn. But I think there are areas, there are levels that we need to revisit to make sure that we are still going to achieve what we want to achieve. I know a lot of the NGOs look at the SDGs too, as something of developing countries. A lot of us in Europe haven't actually understood that the SDGs are the global SDGs and not for the developing world as the MDGs were. So it's more the development NGOs who are aligning their work and looking at targets and a results-based framework within their strategies to see whether the SDGs are being contributed towards, and also the monitoring. What capacity do we have as NGOs to monitor and keep our governments accountable for reaching the SDGs? Our governments have signed up to the SDGs. They have a huge responsibility, and we need to be part of that responsibility. But as civil society and as NGOs, we need the monitoring tools. And also, I'll just mention briefly the CSR National Action Plan. The outlining the actions and having measurable actions, and really a results-based framework on how we are going to monitor an action plan is going to be instrumental and is going to be absolutely necessary to reach what we want to reach in CSR aligned with SDGs.
In fact, that brings me to a question I wanted to ask both of you, Glenn and you, Claudia. What do you think is the state of affairs in Malta in regards to SDGs? How much do you think is known outside there? In your sector as well, in the voluntary sector, or in the communities outside? Where are we when it comes to the SDGs? And do you think from the voluntary sector there is done enough? And maybe Glenn, do you think from the business? You take the business part. What do you think where we are at the moment?
I think awareness is still required. Fortunately, I think the smaller generations are being addressed with regards that the SDGs, and I think that is the future for the success of the SDGs in the coming years. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are not aware of the SDGs and what all they are about. And that's why in the past, and we're still trying to do so, we tried to address people around sustainability issues coming from all walks of life, and also giving this information free of charge to educate our people. But I think that at least with the help of a lot of partners, like for example NGOs, like for example Nature Trust, which are addressing the school population, these SDGs are being addressed to these school children. And I think, as I mentioned before, that is the future for the success of the SDGs.
Thank you, Glenn. Claudia?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Glenn that there's a lack of awareness. But now to go on to funding, how many of the NGOs have the capacity first and foremost, the time and also the funding? There is no specific funding available in Malta for the promotion of the SDGs. In the work we are doing, obviously the day-to-day running of our organizations, the services we are providing, the projects we are implementing, then those can be translated, measured, and obviously aligned with the SDGs. But apart from that, as a focus on the SDGs, there's absolutely no funding on a national level or at a local level for us to bring to the public what these SDGs are. So over there, I see a big lacuna for Malta in actually collecting data. For instance, how are we collecting data? What data is being collected at the end of the day? I know there was a report not so long ago, which we were asked to feed in, but I mean, we need templates. We need to draw up results-based templates, which are going to give us the targets that we are trying to reach, the outcomes at least, and then the results. So this, I think, is necessary for us to raise the awareness that we require.
I mean, unfortunately, we don't have Mauro, because that would have been obviously very important to hear Mauro's input about the funding for NGOs and for the capacity building, because like you are correct, there are so many NGOs, but very few of them really have the capacity to really implement and do all that. On the other hand, like Glenn said as well, and I must say and confirm that EcoScholar is doing a brilliant job. When we went on the resilient community, when we talked to school children, they all knew about the SDGs, much more than anybody else. The only remark I have a bit is that the SDGs in EcoScholar's part are very environmental driven, which is not a bad thing, but SDGs are not just the environment. There's much more into it. And I think what, like Felix said as well, that business is important, but the awareness creation, what I can say as well, that when we at SCORE contact the businesses, the young and bubbling entrepreneurs, the younger generation is all aware. They want sustainable business. They want to do it in the right way. And I think as well from the consumer part now, the younger consumers are very aware now, and they will only support businesses which is up to their thing of sustainability. So I always preach to business, if you don't listen to the young generation, to our generation today, you will not have good employees in future, because they won't come and work for you, and you will not have consumers because they won't buy your product, or they won't like what product you are producing. So it is for the business community very, very important to listen to what is going on. But we need, like you said, we need much more funding. I think part of that as well, maybe Claudia, and I don't know, Claudia and Glenn, both of you, is that government has signed up. Government is doing things in Malta, because I'm not saying things are not happening in Malta. A lot is happening, but very haphazardly and very much in silos. And again, government is doing bits and pieces, but on their own, be it equality, be it itself, and not embracing it with the whole community, with the voluntary sector, with the business sector. But saying government is doing that. And that's why we think this national plan is so important, where we get everybody together and working in the same direction. And businesses can then choose and pick and say, in my business philosophy, this part of the SDGs is most important, and can embrace and help on that area, because sometimes you can't embrace all 17. You're aware of them, but maybe your priority in your business is more towards your empowerment of your employees, or your consumer connections with your consumers. So you can pick, but what Claudia said as well, what is very important, when we have a national plan and we have the actions all outlined, we actually measure them, and we know where we are and what we are achieving. Because I think at the moment we are not very clear of where we are and what we are actually achieving. And for me, the SDGs are very much ad hoc driven by government, which I think is wrong. And it's not embracing the whole community. Maybe I have your comment to that.
I'll go back a little bit though, because Corinne is talking about the younger generation over here. And there was Mark also, who asked us about, let me see. Yes, I'm afraid if the SDGs are not part of the government's priority, it will not be in the media. No, I
don't think so.
They are not part of government's priority. And basically also, I would say, because let's have a look also as Europeans today. Has Europe embraced the SDGs as much as we should embrace them, just because they come out of the UN? Okay, I don't want to get political, but the SDGs are not an EU initiative, so the SDGs don't feature in Europe's policy papers, in Europe's funding, not much, except for development. So here, I think we're losing a lot of the impact that we as Europeans can give as a focus to the SDGs. The school curriculum or the extra school curriculum and development education or sustainable education today, what importance are we giving that to our children? The SDGs, as we mentioned, with the young are, there is more knowledge than the elderly or than the adults or also youth. In university, how are universities promoting the SDGs? How are they aligning all the courses to be aligned with the SDGs? I think we are not giving enough importance to the SDGs. When we're going to come to our midterm review, I think we will have a few areas and issues which we will have to tackle, which we will have to confront to say we are not doing enough. It's never enough. However, we have very clear targets to reach. Are we taking account of these targets? So the raising of awareness and the feeding of the information on the media, and I will mention the media, and the media should play a vital role. What do the SDGs mean for me as Claudia in the world today? I think if we all own at least part of an SDG somehow or another, we'll realize that the SDGs can improve the whole world. And that is why the philosophy behind it all is leave no one behind. We don't want to leave anybody behind, and we want happier communities. So also when we're talking about justice and peace, it's not only on the level of poverty of developing countries or food security, it's on a whole higher level of institutions that the community needs to speak out on human rights, for instance, the violations of human rights. Are we doing enough for human rights? Are we doing enough for hate speech and the hatred that there is in this world? The xenophobia. We're guided by the SDGs. We still have a lot to do and a lot to achieve. And unless we're going to have a huge amount of awareness raising and more monitoring and really these results that need to be made us all aware that we are not reaching the results in various and many areas at national level, but also at global level.
But Claudia, like you say, I fully agree. But when you see on the EU level, you see today, CSR Europe, which is obviously our partner organization where we are a member, is putting up this summit over a whole week, because obviously the SDGs are so wide-reaching and have so many different aspects. And I think that's why, in fact, in Malta, we need this national plan. And like Mark said, it's not on the government's priority and to go to the government ministries. Mark, the biggest problem is that obviously there's all the different ministries. So you need, even from the government side, to get from all the ministries together a plan, like we did as well from the business side, and then put that together in a national plan, which then can be measured. Otherwise it goes, every ministry does something on its own, sometimes duplicating even, or sometimes contrary. We have that. And then, the media can, on the other hand, on its own, I don't think it needs to only report what government is doing. I think that is, I would put media a bit on a low level. I think media has its own, should have its own dent of bringing that in the forefront. And like it did now, most probably in COVID, with all the issues on mental health, these are all issues which are part of the SDGs, but they're all coming out in bits and pieces. And what we are trying, as CORE always have been saying, is let's try and put them in a national framework, because otherwise we get lost, because it's very difficult to cope with all of them. All right, and then you can find the different parts who are expert in a different field and can put their thing in. Otherwise, I think we will not manage to get a holistic approach toward the SDGs. Glenn, maybe your input on that?
Claudia, Helga, I think a remarkable thing that CORE did was the drawing up of the National Action CSR plan for Malta, and we are looking forward to launch this national plan and support you in to deliver the deliverables in this action plan. We started a small project we did together during the summer school, although COVID-19 didn't permit us much, where we started explaining to the younger generations the National Action CSR plan to these children attending the local summer school. And we look forward to that this action plan is officially launched and start supporting you to implement it. We look forward in this regard.
We are still driving that, obviously. We in fact had a talk today and have to go back to the minute because it's obviously one ministry has to put it all together, which we are at the moment working with, and hopefully we will get that because it's necessary. And I think we need almost like a national authority to keep it all together and build it up and measure it, because I think for me, like even for I think businesses, it would be important to have measurements because that's where you are. And then obviously, and even from the business side, like Corinne said, we have to still go on the adult to engage, but we have to do that maybe more in a way of best practices to bring forward people who are doing things, because a lot is being done. I mean, we mustn't say that nothing is done. It's just that it's not put together in a proper framework. But we know from even small businesses, and like I said, now in this difficult time, businesses came forward on their own, helping and trying to see where they can help the community and the people. So the spirit is there. It just needs to be sort of fostered properly and organized properly, in my opinion. What other questions? Let me try and see.
There's a question from Erica. How is best to address the importance of SDGs with marginalized groups of society? A very interesting question, and which, an area I reckon which hasn't been given too much importance either. However, we were delighted, especially the organizations who are working on migration, that migration was actually included this time within the SDGs, because as we all know, we are all facing a huge problem on migration. And I think it's so important that the SDGs are translated and not discriminated against the minority groups. Whatever we are doing for the communities at large needs to include our minority groups. And this is where I think more emphasis, more thinking, and more logical thinking needs to give. And this is where, again, we need to measure, are we losing out? Are we forgetting our minority groups? Are we looking at the SDGs at a more from a bigger lens? So yes, I agree, and an excellent example with, I mean, Felix has asked for people living with disabilities. Of course, the importance that we should be giving on social inclusion and social inclusion measures today. We have a national action plan for inclusion. How are we measuring it? How are we monitoring it? What funding is there to give us the tools to monitor and to measure? And these are all areas I think we need to be looking at, and maybe with CORE go into further once the CSR action plan is into, and creating the necessary templates for monitoring and evaluation and measurement.
And I think to try and slowly maybe sum it up a bit, because when we're getting towards our time slot, I don't know, Matteo, how far are we time-wise?
We have around 5 minutes left for the panel, and then we conclude, yeah.
Okay, maybe to try and sum it up a bit slowly. I think we all realize that obviously this national action plan or a national plan to get all the stakeholders in together and working at it is of other importance, and that things are done. But I think as well, like Felix says, I think especially what we are realizing now, that in these difficult times, and we are not over it, we are still going full into it, and what we are hearing, it will be end of 21 or maybe 22 when we get back to a new normal or to a different lifestyle. In the meantime, I think poverty will increase, a lot of underlying social issues will come out. So more than anything, at this time now, where we need something like that to try and do it in a coordinated and in the proper way. Also like inclusions and whatever. I mean, not to see the people in the community as a whole. Everybody has something to give. We can't see them as burdens, but more what can they give, what can they bring, and helping them to give us the utmost in a community. So I think we will continue driving, but I think as well what is important is that, like we saw on the summit, it is such a big and a vast subject which you can't even do in a thing. You can't just touch one SDG or the other. With the 17, they embrace so many things that you need a summit over a whole week to go into each and everything. And I think that is well what we have to realize in Malta, that it's not just environment or this, it is wide ranging in every aspect of life. And that's what we have to embrace as well. And where we as well need most probably funding, and even from EU level, maybe to see it a bit more and give it more importance. And I think it's coming out in this time now as well. And I can only say that thanks God we are part of CSR Europe, so we are always getting to know what's happening in the other country and have a good network as core to work with them. We still have a long way to go, but now more than anything in this difficult time, because we are feeling it when we are now approaching businesses, they said, but we are just surviving. So we don't have time to think of anything else. No, if you need to survive, you need to think of new ways how to survive and where you want to go. Because that is the time now to think business will not be what it was before. You need to think new, you need to be creative and in a way dynamic to change. It is, we are being asked now to change, and to change dramatically. Not easy, very frightening, because people don't like changing, but we have no choice but to change, because that's what we are seeing now every day. So I think with that I would pass on to Matteo maybe.
Yes, thank you, Helga. Brilliant discussion. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Claudia, for your presentations. And of course, a big thank you to the participants. Thank you for interacting with us as well, sending your questions. Just as a side note, if you would like to get in touch with us as well, perhaps you would like us to send you a presentation of the CSR plan or any other thing which is connected to the SDGs, send me an email. I wrote it down. It's matteo.privitelli@core.org.mt. Basically, it's probably the email that you received the invitation from as well, because I was the one that sent you the invite. Big thank you as well to the technical support that helped us so much, even resolve the issues, and to CSR Europe once again for basically organizing all this. And as I said, I mean, if you want to get in touch with us, feel free to write to us. Okay, we love to work with people. We love to bring people together to create projects and good initiatives. Other than that, I wish you all to stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you in other occasions and events. So thank you all.
All right, thank you all, especially Claudia and Glenn for being here with us today, and thank all the participants. Thank you and stay safe.